Oh, stargazing on a beautiful clear night and looking at the star cluster, the Pleiades. Can't get any better than that, folks. I'm Stargazer Mark, and so glad you're with us today to stay star curious on Stay Curious. As beautifully behind me is the Pleiades star cluster over here with some of the nebulosity that these stars were born out of 100 million years ago. And off my other shoulder is the planet Mars that visited the Pleiades a couple of weeks ago, and it's now dimming as it's moving away from Earth. But we'll get our last looks in the month of March of the surface of Mars, and then it'll be gone for another 2 years, too far away to see those polar caps. So if you got a telescope, check it out. Today we're going to stay star curious about the Pleiades star cluster here. This is one of the most important objects in the sky in the history of mankind, from depicted as a harem of women to a break in the sky where human souls would escape to eternity. The Pleiades star cluster is full of lots of legends and myths, and we're going to explain some of those to you today. The Pleiades is one of the most famous objects in the sky, maybe recorded by cavemen 100,000 years ago. The Pleiades are among the first stars mentioned in any kind of literature, appearing in Chinese annals in about 2500 BC. The earliest European literature references are in a poem by Hesiod around 1000 BC and in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. In fact, here is that poem by the Greek poet Hesiod, who wrote in Works and Days, "And if longing seizes you for sailing the stormy seas, when the Pleiades flee mighty Orion and plunge into the misty deep, and all the gusty winds are raging, then do not keep your ship on the wine-dark sea, but, as I bid you, remember to work the land." And boy, that was about 600 BC when he wrote that. And it talks about the Pleiades fleeing Orion, who is in a lot of mist chasing them across the sky. Well, as we look at some pictures that I'm going to share that I've taken, most of them, at our Pleiades, the night sky last night. Marty, hello to you. This is what the sky looked like last night, Marty, in my backyard. There we have the Pleiades above my head, and to the way up to the top, the bright stars, the planet Mars. It's moved that far away from the Pleiades in about a month. And the other red star is the eye of Taurus the bull, Aldebaran. And whoops, that popped in there way too early. What'd that go for there, Marty? All right, there we go. The This is the outline, okay, of Taurus the bull. You basically see a group of stars that make a V, and Aldebaran's the eye of the bull. We're looking at its shoulder, and in the shoulder is the Pleiades star cluster there. So you go out tonight, you'll see it. Of course, I go out there to do something astronomy, and the clouds chase me away. Those are wisps of clouds coming in our sky there. But the Pleiades, there it is, without the notations and with very easy to find in your night sky. There again is the Pleiades rising with Mars a few years ago in above a mountaintop in Virginia. Humankind has always looked up at the Pleiades stars for guidance. Sailors have relied on the stars for navigation. Now, this is not a constellation. It's what we would call an asterism. It actually looks like a little tiny little dipper. The sailors relied on it for navigation, farmers to sow and harvest crops. The Zuni tribe in New Mexico called the stars the seed stars, and when the cluster disappeared every spring, this was the time to sow. Other cultures believe they seeded the planet and the original 7 mothers of the earth. The Pawnee tribe, we're going to hear a couple Pawnee tribe, North American, Native American thoughts of what the Pleiades were to them. The Pawnee tribe in Nebraska had this saying: "Look as they rise, up they rise, over the line where sky meets earth, Pleiades. Lo, they are ascending, coming to guide us, leading us safely, keeping us one. The Pleiades teach us to be like you, united." That's the Pawnee tribe in Nebraska. And you read that united. They're always together in the sky, and that's something you can do. Uh, that the ancients would take note of, because they didn't know what these were. They didn't know these were individual stellar nuclear energy going on to create stars in the sky. They had no idea what was going on there. And when they were clustered together, they would always think, oh, they're talking to each other, or they're grouped together for a reason. Um, of course, in Greek history, as we get into another beautiful picture of the Pleiades, there, that looks more like a tiny little dipper there, Marty, but the little dipper in the north is much bigger than this, of course. But you have 6 or 7 stars that you can see. This was always a test of eyesight in some cultures. How many could you see? If you had keen eyesight, you would be a scout. If you had poor eyesight, you'd stay back in the camp with the children and the women. I'm not sure I'd ever see more than 3 or 4 of them, Marty, so I could stay in the camp. But of course, it was a not feat of strength, but feat of your own eyesight to see this. Yes, Marty, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say today I would just see one.
Yeah, you just see one today. Yeah, we're too old to go out and hunt. So, for millennia, the 7 sisters immortalized have been the objects of wonder and fascination across the globe. And we've established that. The main mythology comes from the Greeks, okay? And as we look at another picture of them, you can take pictures like this in the sky. This is just a simple camera lens, maybe a 100 millimeter lens. But if you take a time exposure of longer than 30 seconds, you'll get star trails on there like you barely see in this one at the top. But with today's digital cameras, put it on 2000 ISO, set it on 3 or 4 seconds on a tripod, use self-timer so you get all the shake out of that camera, and you might get a great picture like this. Let's talk about that they have been the subject of myths and legends in almost every culture on our planet. Tales of the 7 sisters have been passed on by word of mouth through poetry, art, music, and architecture by Greeks, Aborigines, Chinese, Native Americans, Egyptians, Polynesians, just to name a few. All right. And a lot of the mythology, there's Mars and again, our background. A lot of the mythology centers around the Greek story that there were 7 sisters. Their parents were Atlas, the great Titan. Atlas, he had the world on his shoulders, and he gave birth to these children, and he couldn't pay attention to them, so he threw them into the sky to be taken care of. So after a chance meeting with the hunter Orion, the Pleiades and their mother became the objects of hot pursuit. Orion, being a man's man hunter out there, was chasing these women around. To save them from being molested by Orion in this mythology of the Greek, Zeus changed them into flocks of doves, which he set into the heavens. So the 7 sisters are also known as water girls or ice maidens due to their association with water in the rivers, rain, hail, forest, frost, all that sort of stuff. The Greek legends often refer to the sisters as Oceanids. Some sources claim that the name Pleiades originates from the Greek word pleion, meaning to sail. So you've always got the one off to the side, and they're named. Here are the names of the Pleion, all right, is in Atlas, are actually one star seen as 2 stars seen as one. Alcyone, Mia, Asterope, Tayageta, Ciliano, Electra, and Merope are the names of these famous stars, all sisters. The Japanese culture we'll talk about here as we look at this beautiful picture of the Pleiades. Now, I did not take this picture. This is a Hubble telescope picture of the Pleiades, showing you the luminosity where they're born out of. And the science of the Pleiades is this: a star cluster, more than 100 stars were born out of a cosmic cloud about 100 million years ago. This was all a tight one cloud, and through the nuclear physics of star formation, all these stars were born out of this gigantic cloud, like the Orion Nebula that we've talked about. 100 million years ago, Marty, think about that. They were a fresh, tight cluster when the dinosaurs were roaming the Earth 65 million years ago. All right, millions and millions of years was hard for us to consider. And I was just contemplating the other day, thinking about that. The dinosaurs roaming the Earth 65 million years ago. And this was barely in its infancy, the Pleiades. And in that 65 million years, it has spread out by the physics of motion. They've separated away from each other, and they continue to be separated away from each other 400 light years from Earth. So the light we're looking at here that Hubble captured left this star cluster in the 1620s, all right, over 400 years ago. Now, another cluster that we know that this looks like a dipper, right? Well, think of the Big Dipper, the hindquarters of Ursa Major, the Big Bear. Well, the Big Dipper, we think, is a star cluster just like the Pleiades that 100 million years has taken, another 100 million or more, for it to separate. So what we're looking at, the stars of the Big Dipper actually were maybe 300 million years ago born out of a cosmic cloud, just like the Pleiades are here, close together. It's incredible to think about. Everything when you're looking up is in an incredible amount of motion, that motion usually being around 30,000 miles an hour or more. All right. But that's the science of the Pleiades, born out of a cosmic cloud 100 million years ago. And today we look at them as one of the most beautiful objects in the sky. Now, the Japanese culture love these stars. They love everything to do with mythology and women. And the name for the Pleiades in Japanese is what, Marty? You got any clue?
Subaru.
Subaru. That's right, Marty. Subaru, just like the Japanese car. This car company since 1953 has used this star symbol, and there is the genesis of the Subaru star signals logo, the first one in the upper left from the 1950s. They decided to depict only 6 stars in the company logo because only 6 of the stars are visible to the naked eye, unless you got really keen eyesight. Well, it's an attractive oval emblem now with a silver border, metallic blue background. All right, you see the 6 pointed stars in all of the renditions of it over the years. They actually translates to Pleiades, the word Subaru. And there it is there. And we put the Subaru car in somewhere else, Marty. That's going to pop up here later, I guess. So.
It's your last slide, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't number it right. But look at that emblem on one of the new Subaru cars. No, Subaru hasn't spent us any money yet, but we better watch that on YouTube, I think. So a lot of interest there with Subaru as we look at this Pleiades star cluster. It's one of the first things you learn as an amateur astronomer when you see in the night sky. A lot of us amateur astronomers became that in the fall when it was dark at 6, 7 o'clock at night instead of summertime when it was 10 when it got dark. Mom didn't want me to stay up that late at night, okay, when I was a teenager. But books that you find in the library, like The Secret Language of Stars and Planets there, okay? There's a good one to have there in our green screen. This is a beautiful book that gives some nice illustrations of the constellations and their mythology and places in the world today that we celebrate these things, okay? Sometimes you'll go to a library and find a discounted book, Point to the Stars, which doesn't look like much. But this 1968 book, there's Gemini the Twins, okay, outlined there in this book. just a very interesting uh, books on astronomy of any decade are good because the stars don't change. Here's an actual book, Stars by Herbert Zim from 1959. I actually have had this since a young boy, maybe 10 years old when I got this book. And it talks about the Pleiades right here. And the picture in this book is inferior to the one over my shoulder that I took a few years ago there. But nonetheless, these books are cheap, and lots of libraries give them away as they get rid of older books, and they're beautiful. They have beautiful artwork in them, and the astronomy is just as good as it was 50 years ago, except the updates on the planets and the cosmology of how we figured out what black holes are and that sort of thing. But basically, the principles of the sky and the constellations and being a stargazer are in any book that you can find in the library discount bin that'd be astronomy related. So love sharing that with you. Now let's share a few more Native American stories as we look at a couple more pretty pictures here. Let me see how many more I got to show here. Okay, we're going to show that. As an amateur astronomer, I find it very rewarding to sketch and draw things that you see. We're going to see that here in a moment. The Native Americans, the Western Mono Indians, all right. Here's one for you, Marty. They believed the Pleiades stars represented a group of wives who were excessively fond of eating onions and were thrown out of their homes by their angry husbands for their smelly breath, okay? Repenting in their loneliness, of course, like men are apt to do, the husbands sought out their wives, but in vain. They had wandered into the sky and become stars. Now that is getting mad at your husbands, all right? To the Blackfoot tribe of Alberta and Montana, the stars were known as the orphan boys. The fatherless boys were rejected by their tribe, but were befriended by a pack of wolves. Saddened by their lonely lives on earth, they asked the Great Spirit to let them play together in the sky. As a reminder of their cruelty in contrast to the kindness of animals, every night the tribe were afflicted by the howling of the wolves that pined for their lost friends. That's an interesting one. The Aboriginal legends of Australia, there you go. We've got a few for our mates down in Australia, Cliff Watson. And Scott Pook are in Tasmania. Aboriginal tribes from the Northern Territories called the Seven Sisters Yugmarura Water Girls. The sisters were regarded as the beholders of beauty and possessed the magic of love. Their father, and I think I got one here. Yeah, we'll look at the names there. Whoop, no, we'll go that way. Their father, let me go back here to that as we look at the names of them there. The Aboriginal tribes believed their father, whom they called Dunia, was transformed into a crocodile to stop his incestuous ways. Their Aborigines also believed the stars wear a crystal-covered coat, which explains why they shine so brightly. That's very interesting, the crystal-covered coat. The Hindu legends, the Pleiades were collectively known in India as Kritika, the wives of the seven wise men named the seven Rishis, or seven sages, or they were also the six mothers of the war god Murugan, who developed six faces, one for each of them. But this is my favorite one. In Wyoming, North America, stands Matea Tipi, or the Devil's Tower. All right. This widely popular known 1,200-foot tall rock formation has a great legend to it. The Kiowa tribe were moving south for the winter when they camped by a stream where there were many bears. One day, 7 young girls were playing further along the stream when suddenly some of the bears began to chase them. The frightened girls leapt onto this big rock and asked the Great Spirit to protect them. The Great Spirit heard the girls' cries and made the rock grow upwards, taller and taller, almost vertical on its sides, taking the girls with it and leaving the bears unable to reach them. The bears, however, continued to claw away at the rock, leaving deep scratch marks and making it grow even taller, pushing the 7 girls into the heavens to become stars. So that is one of my favorite legends of the Pleiades star cluster there, having the Devil's Tower there involved with it. And I call our vehicle assembly building our Devil's Tower around here, because every causeway you get over, you can look and see it from a great distance afar there, Marty. Well, like I said, I like to sketch things, and in 1998, on February 12th at 15 degrees on Bays Mountain one night, I took a sketch through a 17-inch telescope, a really, really good one. Good for what we call the Messier objects, or the faint galaxies and clusters. But wispy filaments around bright stars. It actually looked foggy to me in the lens, but that was the wispiness of the cloud that I could see with my own eyes 400 light years away. All right, that those photons hitting my eye in making this sketch of it. So just to give you an example, nothing scientific, nothing artistic much, something just for me to remember a night stargazing. And that's what albums and diaries are all about, is remembering times that we want to maybe look back occasionally in our old age and say, gee, I'll probably never do that again. But I'd like to get behind a big telescope in a dark sky again, because that was a pretty phenomenal situation there. So, well, we wanted to thank you all for sharing today. Going to show you another picture of one of our friends who lives in Slovenia, over in Europe over there. ESA engineer, Rock Keats, is right there. Rock, hello, young man. Great to hear from you. He visited our museum back in April, Marty. In fact, we did a wonderful April Fool's show with Rock, pretending that he was on a Google Meets and I wasn't on it. I don't think that fooled too many people. But he's going to be in March or April doing some work at Johnson Space Center. And he's going to try to get some time off and come over here to the Space Coast. Hope he can do that. And Rock was out looking at the sky like I was, and he sent us a picture of the comet that was looked better in Europe than here. But this is through with his smartphone, okay, over the weekend through a 7-inch telescope, Maksutov. All right, and he said you can show these on your show Friday. Well, there is the Orion constellation last night. The bright star to my right there is the brightest star in the sky, Sirius. This is maybe a 4-second exposure at 2000 ISO sensitivity. You see clouds above my head coming in, chasing me out. Of course, the 3 stars of Orion's belt hanging down. You see the sword hanging down. And in the middle of the sword, Rock Keats took this picture of the Orion's Nebula on his smartphone, Marty. Pretty good image there through a very modest telescope. And then he sent this picture of the moon that he took last week. So good to hear from Rock Keats. He's got a phenomenal story to tell about the look at our April podcast on YouTube, and he talks about the gateway and how they're designing the gateway to just not be used in lunar orbit, but this gateway could be taken to an asteroid or Mars or be brought to Earth orbit someday. So this is a very utilitarian space station that ESA, Canada, and Japan are basically the countries involved. So here is again the sky last night, Mars above me, the reddish star to the left there, Aldebaran, which means follower, following the Pleiades around the sky. So I hope that you've enjoyed our stay in Star Curious today with you all. And Marty, we have Bill Whiting watching. I know you enjoyed spending some time with Bill. And Connie, you guys went out and saw which astronaut you see? Terry
Terry Wilcott.
Terry Wilcott there. Yes, Marty and Tom Usiak is watching today. Doug Forrest, Lisa Marie. Hey, Lisa Marie, good you're watching. Melissa Pope is here on our Space Coast. Zubin's watching. We're glad of that. Gary Gerald. Hey, buddy, up there in Collins, Georgia. Just, of course, everything's west of Savannah, but he's exactly west of Savannah in Georgia. Corey Skinner's watching. Christopher Mick. Hey, Keith Sewell. Thanks for popping your name up there, buddy. He says he's in Arizona. Keith, a couple months ago, said, take all this, and I'm headed to the road. So I hope you're enjoying your travels out there, my friend. We missed hearing you chime in on Stay Curious and seeing at our astronomy clubs. Keith Sewell. And Cliff Watson gave us 200 stars. You going to be outdone by that? Stay Curious watchers. Those stars are worth some money to us, and they're earmarking that money for use here to your favorite space video podcast, we hope. So, well, Marty, kicked off another week here. We're up to 750 some episodes now. I think we'll be back for another one. We got some guests lined up all through the month for y'all. And next week, we're hoping to have Terry White talk about the shuttle garages, the OPFs, and we've got Jim Miller lined up. He's an old-timer in Apollo that worked on the early computers. We're going to talk about that next week. And, of course, sneak in some stargazing for you all from your own backyard. So until then, thank you, Marty, for a great job this week. We hope that you make plans to visit our American Space Museum in downtown Titusville this vacation coming up here, spring breaking off. So if you do, be sure and stop by and say hi to me, Marquette. I can't wait to meet you to bridge the space between us.